Recording. Okay.
So you were mentioning, George, there was a village in South Ossetia
Yes,
that
called Nuli.
called Nuli. And what happened to that village and when?
Well, actually, it all happened before the world knew and the world heard about Georgian-Russian war, because the news about it were first heard about in August 8th, but 4 days before that, in August 4, the ethnic Georgian village Nuli didn't exist anymore.
What had happened to it?
Well, it was shelled, bombed, well, everything happened to it, except there were no helicopters and there were no planes. So there was a ground attack, no airplanes, but everything else, heavy artillery, shelling, bombing, everything took place. The people had left that place, but the world didn't know about it. It's a small village in a small country, and maybe it just wasn't in the center of the world news. And you do remember that by that time the Olympic Games in Beijing were just opened, so the world attention was kind of switched to that event.
And that obviously flies in the face of the traditional or established timeline where that said Georgia shelled the village on the 7th, and that is what began this conflict. So it's obviously in direct contradiction.
Well, opposing parties could, and countries in this case, of course, could always find arguments and argue about it and blame a lot of things on each other. But the important thing is to pay attention to the very important aspect of this war. On whose territory, on whose country did the war take place? It was Georgian land. Historically, or judicially, or in every aspect, it is a Georgian land. And the big, aggressive, imperialistic Russia came in and invaded Georgia. I can understand that for some people in West, the plot could be too simple. They could think, oh, there should be something going on. It's not that easy. Yes, it is that easy.
Russia just wanted what
well, they did want it a long time ago, and all this didn't start just yesterday, or even in August 4th, when I mentioned about Nuli, or even days or months before. It all started very long time ago. You know that even before such thing as Soviet Empire, Soviet Union, because it was empire, existed, there was the Russian Empire, which invaded Georgia in late 18th century. And ever since that, Georgia's territory, Georgia's soil, was becoming smaller and smaller, gradually, of course. If you look at the 1953 Soviet map, well, it was one state, but they had different republics, 15 republics with their own borders, right? Georgia was 78,000 square kilometers. And when the Soviet Union broke up in 1991, Georgia was 69.7 thousand square kilometers. So what did that 9,000 square kilometers go? Answer is simple. To the north, Russia. Right. Okay, nobody said anything because we didn't want to make trouble with our northern neighbor. And we just sat quietly, minding our own business, trying to build our new country, old new country, because our country has a very big and long history. But we are newly separated from this great empire. We are trying to make connections, diplomatic connections, to build our economy and every other aspect of our country, right? We had to make the state, to build the state from the scratch, practically. But right after the breakup of Soviet Union, but now in Russia's face, started try to gain the territories and the power back.
So it's been a long and gradual encroachment.
Well, Well, right after the broad breakup of the Soviet Union, conflict started in two northern parts of Georgia. The first one was so-called South Ossetia. Let me tell you that such things didn't even exist in Georgia. In Georgia, there are a lot of nationalities that lived here for centuries, but no one had ever harmed these people. These people lived here peacefully, along with Georgians, and this is not a Georgian fairy tale. But Ossetians, the ethnic group of Ossetians, lived in Georgia in different places, but in 1901, in the whole Tsotne region, there was only one registered Ossetian family. That's in 1901. What do we see in 1991? What do we see? A lot of Ossetian population. Okay, nobody's arguing about it. Okay, but these people lived there peacefully. They had mixed families, Georgians and Ossetians. They were married to each other, and this whole conflict was artificial, was made up of nothing, because someone needed to control their smaller neighbors. And that's not the only, Georgia is not the only case, of course. Right. Azerbaijan, Armenia, sure. All these are the same scenario.
It goes back to an old Stalinist idea of keeping your divide and conquer. It's a simple divide and conquer mentality.
Stalin didn't invent it, but yes. Yes.
Well, I heard somebody describe it as it was perfected during the Soviet era, where you had all these little places, and then you would play them off against one another to keep them cohesive, to keep them always fighting. Then you control everybody that way.
Yes, of course.
Yeah.
And it's always easier when you are stronger. When you are richer, when you have resources, when you can manipulate by your gas, oil, and I think a big part in that was aspiration of these small nations, smaller in regards with Russia, of course. Their aspiration to Europe, to democracy, to modern civilization, because those very aspirations had hidden threat against Russia, because Russia is not a democratic state. It's an autocratic state ruled by a little group of people, and I'm not going to say anything new by that. But all these countries striving for democracy are a threat to Russia, because if Russian people look around and see that everything around them is flourishing, and their country, which is, by the way, rich in every aspect, is in that condition, of course there will be unrest in the country.